For 55 years, this place stood as one of the most important educational institutions in the country. And then, in June 2024, it was shut down. Instantly, permanently, without a goodbye. No public consultation, no transition period, no final day. The explanation was safety. The reality is far more complicated. This is not just the story of a science museum. It's the story of how neglect, political priorities, and redevelopment plans collided, and how a public institution was quietly allowed to fail. This is the story of the Ontario Science Centre. The idea behind the Science Centre emerged in the 1960s, a decade defined by technological optimism. Governments around the world began to realize that science literacy would be critical to the future, not just for experts, but for everyday citizens. Traditional museums at the time were largely passive experiences. You looked, you read, you moved on. But a new concept was gaining traction: interactive science centers, where visitors could experiment, explore, and learn by doing. And Ontario embraced this idea wholeheartedly. In August 1964, Ontario Premier Joan Robarts announced the creation of the Centennial Centre of Science and Technology. Construction started in 1966, with plans to open the Science Centre as part of the Canadian Centennial celebrations in 1967. However, it did not open to the public until 2 years later, on September 26, 1969, and now under a new name, the Ontario Science Centre. The Science Centre was built in Flemington Park, northeast of downtown Toronto, overlooking the Don Valley Ravine. The location was unusual, but that was part of the vision. The site offered space, natural beauty, and the opportunity to integrate architecture with the landscape. The center was designed to feel like a journey: ramps, bridges, and walkways guiding visitors through exhibits while offering views of the surrounding ravine. The building itself was bold and modern. Designed by architect Raymond Moriyama's firm, it reflected late modernist and brutalist influences, with exposed concrete, dramatic angles, and a focus on function over ornament. More importantly, the building was designed for people. It emphasized accessibility, openness, and flow. The Science Centre was funded and operated by the Government of Ontario as a public institution. It was part of a broader post-war commitment to education, culture, and civic infrastructure. The center's mandate was clear: to promote scientific literacy, inspire curiosity, and support formal education across the province. Schools quickly embraced it. Field trips became a rite of passage for Ontario students, many of whom visited multiple times throughout their childhood. From the beginning, public reception was overwhelmingly positive. Families flocked to the center. Teachers praised it. Media coverage framed it as a forward-looking investment in Ontario's future. Over the decades, the Ontario Science Centre expanded its reach and reputation. Exhibits were constantly updated to reflect new discoveries and technologies. Temporary exhibitions tackled emerging topics, from computing to climate science. The center became known for its hands-on philosophy. Visitors didn't just read about electricity, they generated it. They didn't just read about sound, they felt it vibrate through their bodies. They didn't just hear about anatomy, they walked inside a beating heart. Live demonstrations became a signature feature. Science communicators performed experiments in front of crowds, turning complex concepts into moments of wonder and excitement. Over time, certain experiences became legendary. The Van der Graaf generator, the Omnimax theater, the human body exhibits. For many visitors, these moments weren't just entertaining, they were formative. The Science Centre's influence extended far beyond its walls. It developed teacher training programs, curriculum-aligned workshops, and outreach initiatives that served communities across Ontario. Its early childhood space, later branded as Kids Park, introduced scientific thinking to the youngest visitors, reinforcing the idea that curiosity begins early. At its peak, the center welcomed well over 1 million visitors per year. It became one of the most visited science museums in the world and a cornerstone of Toronto's cultural identity. For decades, the Ontario Science Centre worked, and it worked well. But while exhibits evolved, the building itself was aging. Like many large public facilities built in the mid-20th century, the Science Centre required continuous investment to maintain its infrastructure. Roofs, bridges, mechanical systems, and concrete structures all needed regular upkeep. Over time, maintenance was deferred, repairs were delayed, and temporary fixes replaced long-term solutions. By the 2010s, some structural issues had become impossible to ignore. Certain pedestrian bridges were closed, requiring shuttle buses to move visitors between sections of the complex. Roof components showed signs of water damage. Engineers flagged concerns that would require significant investment to address properly. Still, the center remained open. Visitors continued to arrive, programs continued to run. Few imagined how abruptly things would change. But on June 21, 2024, the province of Ontario announced that the Ontario Science Centre would close immediately and permanently. The justification was an engineering report citing concerns about reinforced autoclave aerated concrete, a roof material that can degrade over time when exposed to moisture. Officials stated that a small percentage of the roof panels showed deterioration and that the risk of structural failure could not be ruled out. The response was a bit extreme. Not partial closures, not phased repairs, not temporary shutdowns. The entire institution was closed that same day. For a building that had stood for over half a century, this sudden urgency raised immediate questions. And the timing mattered too, because this closure did not happen in a vacuum. A year earlier, in 2023, the provincial government had announced plans to relocate the Ontario Science Centre to Ontario Place as part of a massive waterfront redevelopment project. And suddenly, the old one became too dangerous to keep open. Critics asked obvious questions. If only a small portion of the roof was affected, why close everything? Why not repair it and keep it operating until the new facility was ready? Those questions were never convincingly answered. Perhaps the most damaging detail to emerge after the closure was this. Private donors reportedly offered funding to help repair the building, but those offers were declined. For many, this confirmed what they already suspected, that repair was never the goal, because repairing the building would have complicated the relocation narrative. It would have undermined the claim that closure was unavoidable. Letting the bill die made the move easier. The public's reaction was immediate and emotional. Former visitors shared memories, architects raised alarms, heritage advocates argued that the building itself was culturally significant. The Ontario Science Centre, it turned out, wasn't just a museum. It was a shared memory, and people felt it had been taken from them. In the months that followed, the Science Centre survived in fragments. Pop-up exhibits, mall installations, a relocated children's space at Harbourfront. These were not replacements, these were placeholders. They kept the brand alive, but not the experience. A full-scale science center, one that could occupy a full day, host large school groups, and offer deep, layered exploration, was gone. The province later announced a temporary science center location at Harbourfront Centre, scheduled to open in 2026. While larger than the pop-ups, it's still a fraction of what was lost. It exists because the gap between the closure and the new facility is too large to ignore. And that gap is the result of a decision that didn't need to be rushed. The permanent future of Ontario Science Centre is now tied to Ontario Place, a redevelopment project marked by controversy, privatization, and political urgency. The new Science Centre is promised to be modern, efficient, and integrated into a high-profile waterfront destination. But it will almost certainly be smaller, more commercial, more constrained, and it will serve a different purpose. The original Science Centre was a public institution first. The new one risks becoming an attraction. The Ontario Science Centre shaped how generations understood science, curiosity, and the world around them. It deserved better than an overnight shutdown. As plans move forward on the waterfront, the question isn't whether a new Science Centre will open. It's whether it will still belong to the public in a way the old one did. Because science isn't just something you display, it's something you invest in, consistently, patiently, and publicly. And once that commitment disappears, no new building can fully replace what was lost. If you liked this video and would like to learn more about the environment that surrounds us, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. And stay tuned for more!